Do you remember Big George Foreman from back in the day? Yeah, the terrifying boxer who cleaned out Joe Frazier twice, easily defeated Ken Norton, went life and death with Ron Lyle, and gave us one of the most memorable nights in boxing history when he faced Ali in the Rumble in the Jungle? Close your eyes and think back, and you can probably picture the huge, angry, aggressive knockout artist he once was, just the way we liked him. But have you seen how he lives now? If you followed him back then, it will be an upsetting sight, because the way George Foreman lives now at 75 is sad. We all remember what George Foreman was like in his pomp, right? But for those whose memories have grown hazy, let's do a brief recap. Foreman grew up in Houston, Texas, raised by his mother and her husband, J.D. Foreman, whose name he took because his biological father was not around. Early on, he turned to crime, operating as a mugger from the age of 15. Judging by the intimidating man he became, he was not the kind of kid you'd want to get jumped by, even at that age. But then at 16, he decided to turn his life around and began to learn carpentry and bricklaying. At around this time, he also took up boxing, and as a big, powerful teenager, he quickly discovered that punching people was something he had a special talent for. He was selected to represent the USA at the Olympics, taking gold in Mexico City in 1968.
What a fight he is waging! Oh, the Russian is being beaten all over the ring. He appears to this reporter to have had enough. Referee stops contest. George Foreman is the winner of the gold medal in the heavyweight competition.
An achievement he still counts as his greatest, despite the many notable moments his professional career would produce. With an amateur record of 22-4, Foreman turned pro at 20, fighting and winning 25 times in his first 2 years.
Winner, George Foreman.
Hard to imagine such numbers today, isn't it? But that's how it used to be. All but 3 of those victories came by way of knockout, and Foreman was already establishing a reputation as a huge puncher. After collecting 37 wins and no losses, at age 24, Foreman went to Kingston, Jamaica to fight Joe Frazier, becoming heavyweight champ by obliterating him in just 2 rounds. He then successfully defended his title twice, including against Ken Norton. Next up was Muhammad Ali in the legendary Rumble in the Jungle that took place in Kinshasa, Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Both Frazier and Norton had recently defeated Ali, so Foreman went into the Rumble as favorite. In fact, with Ali supposedly already past his best and Foreman knocking people out for fun, many were actually fearful for Ali's safety and even his life going into the bout. But every fight fan knows what happened next. Ali used his rope-a-dope tactics to wear Foreman out before sending him crashing to the canvas, due to fatigue as much as through the force of his punches in the 8th. So after a reign of just 2 defenses, Foreman had lost his crown, and things started to go downhill from there. Foreman took his first loss badly, and it seriously damaged his ego and self-belief. To regain the spotlight and perhaps also to convince himself that his KO power hadn't left him, he organized an exhibition bout where he would face 5 fighters on the same night. The gimmick backfired, however, and he ended up being booed out of the ring when he was too exhausted to finish his last 2 opponents. There were still some highs left in his boxing career, though, and one came when he returned to the professional ring over a year after his loss to Ali to face Ron Lyle. Lyle's punching power was on the same level as Foreman's, and the ensuing slugfest between the pair won Ring Magazine's Fight of the Year. The 4th round, in which first Foreman, then Lyle, then Foreman again hit the canvas, was named Round of the Year. Foreman won in the 5th, but despite digging deep for the victory, he had looked out of sorts, and questions still remained over whether he could ever again mix it at the top. When he subsequently put Frazier away easily in their rematch, the doubters were silenced, but only temporarily as it turned out, because his next outing nearly ended in disaster. Fighting Jimmy Young in Puerto Rico, Foreman underestimated his opponent and only arrived on the island 1 day before the bout. Without time to acclimatize, Foreman put in a subpar performance, eventually losing by unanimous points decision. In the changing room after the fight, he then collapsed from exhaustion and dehydration, causing him to have a near-death experience. He later recounted how, close to death, he began praying to God despite never previously having been a religious man.
They looked at me and I started screaming and haven't stopped since. Jesus Christ is coming alive in me.
He promised to donate his prize money to charity, but he says he then heard a voice telling him, I don't want your money. I want you. Foreman regained consciousness but was a changed man, and after the fight, he retired from boxing. Of course, he famously came back at the age of 38 after a decade out of the ring. He then recaptured his heavyweight crown at the third time of asking, just shy of his 46th birthday, becoming the oldest heavyweight world champion in history. Rumors have since swirled that his then-promoter Bob Arum was involved in underhand dealings and that he allegedly bribed the IBF to massage their rankings and deliver him his shots at the title. However, at 45, he still did it at an older age than anyone else ever has. So we have to give him his flowers for that. But that was it. And after 3 successful defenses, he lost his final bout against Shannon Briggs and hung them up for good. His final professional record stood at 76-5 with 68 knockouts. So what's become of Foreman now? After his loss to Young and subsequent near-death experience, he underwent a major personality change. In his younger days, he had been one of the most feared fighters on the planet, an angry, sullen, aloof, and arrogant man that other boxers dreaded facing and journalists shied away from interviewing. But afterwards, he became a much happier, talkative, and even jovial man who was fun to be around, a far cry from the menacing figure who had once made his name putting people to sleep in the 70s. Sure, for a while during his comeback, he still possessed knockout power in his fists, but the terrifying Big George of old had gone forever. Nowadays, at 75, he comes across as a jolly grandfatherly figure, an idea the younger George Foreman would have met with a derisive smirk when he was growling and snarling his way up the boxing rankings, knocking out everyone in his way. Having found God, he became a pastor and now leads church services several times a week. So as you can see, he has truly abandoned the hard man image that once defined him. Instead, he has transformed himself into a much more approachable, mellow character in his old age. Worse still, for sports fans of a certain age, Foreman isn't remembered for any of his boxing feats. His wins against Frazier and Norton are no longer celebrated. The rumble in the jungle is ancient history, and his battle with Lyle isn't even mentioned anymore. Rather, younger people know Foreman as that guy on TV with the grill, a former boxer reduced to advertising a kitchen appliance to make ends meet. Being remembered for a grill and having to survive on the supposed $200 million he made from that, instead of being able to live on the money he earned honestly in the ring by punching people in the face, must be the ultimate humiliation. If that wasn't bad enough, he has also become a well-liked TV personality, appearing on such shows as The Masked Singer. He was then eliminated from the show with grace and good humor after thoroughly enjoying himself, as though winning no longer even mattered to him. He now lives with his 5th wife and has 12 children from his various marriages. He named all of his sons George, so at least he won't have any problems remembering their names. He still sometimes goes into the gym to hit a bag, even at his age. What an undignified spectacle. An old man in his 70s mixing with younger athletes and trying to stay in shape when he should be at home with a pipe in his slippers. In all seriousness, in recent years, 2 women have come forward to accuse him of sexual abuse when he was a young man, and they were minors back in the 70s. Foreman strenuously denies these accusations, claiming the charges are nothing but an attempt at extortion. The charges are currently still under investigation, so it's hard to comment on this either way. But let's just hope he didn't do it. But otherwise, the teen mugger turned world champion boxer turned pastor now appears to have found peace and fulfillment as he approaches his twilight years. He is now rightly regarded as a respected elder statesman of the sport and an incredibly popular character within the world of boxing. In fact, Big George Foreman, World Boxing Hall of Famer and International Boxing Hall of Famer, is nothing short of a living legend. Don't change, George. We love you. Keep doing what you do.